Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Death Masterclass. This is Chapter 2. We're on to Gear and Pet Optimization, which, besides that, the one big thing, since we were in Chapter 1 talking about the early, mid, and late game, we are now going to be doing gear, and we're going to be putting the gear into those exact same categories as well. So, Chapter 2 is going to be covering gear you should go after, stats of priority, of course, setting up your pet, some tips to help you train your pet. This is not gonna be a full gardening guide or pet snack farm guide. You can check that later. Same thing with pets. We're not gonna go into a total deep dive into pets because that's an entire rabbit hole that you have to learn at some point anyways, but we're not gonna cover it there. Early late game scalings, of course, for your damage curves and how your gear will affect your damage output, of course, between all three stages. And as you can see here, it says, if you're looking to find pet snack farming or seeds or stuff like that, you can check other places because there are probably guides all about pet training. I know there are a couple on YouTube that you can check out if you are very interested in that topic. So, things to note about gear, specifically this is more entitled for the early game gear, is there are three stats that are usually going to be on a piece of gear that you would be looking for. Health, damage, and there is a utility stat, otherwise accuracy or power pips. You will find accuracy on gear for ice, myth, storm, and fire, or power pips for death, life, balance, which death falls into that category, of course. And then wands are different, as early game wands usually don't have anything on them except for wand hits or specific spells, whereas you get further progressed, you do start seeing that you gain an extra pip into an extra power pip, and then also your spell deck can also contain an extra pip if you are at that level threshold of 100 plus. But also later down the line, wands start giving damage, Athames and rings start giving damage, as well as power pip chance. That is almost guaranteed at late game. And then also you have incoming or outgoing healing on Athames and rings as well, which is handy if you are a life or somebody who's just trying to have healing output on your kit. So obviously, to get the most out of your stats, you want to make sure your gear is the best set that you have for your level. So that leads to a question: when will you usually replace your gear? Well, it is usually down to about a 10 level formula. There is, especially in the early game, there are different gear sets at every 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, etc., all the way up to 50. But those in-betweens, the 10, 20, 30, 40, you're usually not going to replace them at that level. You're going to go 5, 15, 25, all the way up to 50, because 50 obviously has the best gear for level 50, or early game in term. So mid-game usually is going to be 2 spikes. There are not a lot of gear choices for the mid-game besides your level 60 gear, which is going to be your Waterworks 8, or the Celestian set that just came out recently a couple updates ago, and your Castle Dartmoor set at level 100. And then late game is going to be following the 10 level set difference up to 180, which is the max level now with the Dartmoor update. And we'll get more into the late game gear as we continue on this. So, going from gear, we'll talk about pets real quick here. They're also very key into your damage, your resistances, etc., etc. And that is how you best get your stats better, is you have your gear combined with your pet, combined with another thing we'll talk about later in the guide, which is going to be jewels. We won't cover that right now. So really, your pet can really make a lot of a difference. But you can also have pets that don't even have stats on them sometimes at all. They give effects, like a Maycast, where you can get a Maycast Fairy or a Maycast Unicorn, where you get some healing, or a Maycast Legion Shield to give your team defenses, or even something for yourself, like a Maycast Tower Shield. There are even some pets that have a may cast Shatter or may cast Cleanse Ward or something like that. You know, there are a whole bunch of different things for pets that you can have on your pet. And there's even other things that go on in the world space, like opening up chests may give you spell elements or special treasure cards, or, you know. Your pet is really going to be a focal point, especially in the later stages of the game, when you want to really min-max. Early game, you don't really need a super good pet to really progress. But you will have to be patient with your pet, because sometimes you're not going to get that same pet that you want 10 times out of 10. You're going to probably get that pet one time, 1 out of 10 chance. Maybe a little less, depending on, you know, just RNG. Which, obviously, RNG, not the best thing, but hey. Your pets are not always going to be perfect. You will get that perfect pet once in a while, and once you have it, you're set. You're good to go, unless the meta shifts where you need to make a different pet to either give you extra damage, or maybe it's the damage cap is not to a point where you have to stack a whole bunch of damage and you can actually get away with like a triple-double. There are different types of like pet terminologies. I'm not going to go over those either. But yeah, make sure you have a backup pet as well, and also have a snack stockpile. So looking for the right pet, you can use this on your own preference. So that Shadow Cat pet that you got from a boss in Mushu, you can use that. You know, you can use it. Is it a pet? You know, is it going to be the best pet right off the gate? No, of course not. That pet probably has a whole bunch of talents that you don't even want in it. But you can really make any pet into a good pet. It just matters that once you do it, you're probably going to have to weed out the talent pool to get the talents you want. And then once you have all the talents you want, then it's just going and training until you get the pet perfect. Or it can have like shortfalls, or I wouldn't say it's a shortfall, but you could have a situation where it gets a talent that you don't want, but it's still useful, right? So like, let's say your pet, you have Death Dealer, Pain Giver, and you're looking for Death Giver, right? You want that 3rd damage talent, but you end up getting Death Boon. Worry not, once we talk about the Jewel section, you can still put on a Death Giver and still have that extra 6 damage. There's the Mighty Jewel bumps it up to 7. Yeah, okay. We'll talk about Mighty once we get into the Jewel section. Okay, so you just have to keep going, because, like I said, you will have pets that just have a whole bunch of random talents in it that you don't even want. Like, you might have you're trying to make a death pet and it gets up Storm Boon, or Storm Giver, or Storm Assailant, like Storm Crit. What are you gonna do with Storm Crit if you're a death? Really nothing. You can't really use it. Is it in the pool? It could be. You just sort of have to experiment with your pets when you're doing it. And lastly, watch the numbers on it. This is what we call the 2.0 pet. But it is a baseline where you should have these numbers at this point, because of, once again, we'll talk about jewels and the Mighty Jewel. You know, this is why you want Strength at 255, Intelligence 250, Agility, Will at 260, and Power at 250, so you get the number pretty much guaranteed to be the max amount. Here are the 2 pet examples I put on screen for you. One of them is my original pet that I made for my death, Lexi, my Ghastly Opossum, with the triple-double archetype. There are different, like I said, there are different archetypes of pets. And then you have what is soon to be the quad damage setup on the bottom one, the Draconis Mortalis Mighty Maggie. So both are viable. One is more damage-centric, the one with the Death Dealer, Pain Giver, Painbreaker, Mighty. And Lexi is a lot more defensive with the Spellproof Spell Defy, an extra 15% resist, amongst the extra damage that I have from Pain Giver, Death Dealer, Death Giver, and then I sock it on Death Sniper to cover my accuracy. So, both of these pets, you know, you can switch these out whenever you need it. You're fighting a tougher boss, you might be fighting like a storm or a fire, put on Lexi. Oh, I don't need to worry about resistance or dying as much. Okay, we'll just switch to the Draconis Mortalis. There you go, more damage. The only time that you may want to not have a quick damage pet or a quad damage pet is when you're in advanced combat settings like PvP, raids, or challenge modes where there is a hard damage cap %, where if you go over it, it's going to cut your damage down to whatever the damage % is. So if, for example, the damage cap is 234 and you have 247, it will drop that down under to the cap, and there you go. You can't overcap your damage in advanced combat, but usually you're not gonna have to worry about that. So don't worry about that. Like I said, advanced combat and content is not for everybody, so I wouldn't worry about it. All right, snacks, training. Training is straightforward. Voice crack, that was bad. So what you should do: train the pet up to adult, then make a backup just in case it fails, and then just keep doing that until you get the pet done. Or to a point where you can maybe use it. Because you can quest while gaining pet experience. There's a little trick where you train your pet, then you quest, level up, go back to the pet training place, train the pet up, and then rinse repeat until you get it all the way up. Or until you need to hatch again. If you have membership, watch for double pet EXP as a member benefit, because that will help you train your pet faster. Also, this is also a lesser known thing I don't think a lot of people notice, but if you sometimes look when you complete a mainline story quest that follows the main story of Wizard101, you'll actually get 4 pet EXP every time you complete one of those quests. And it's also doubled by the member benefit, so during double pet EXP, you're going to get 8 EXP instead of the normal 4. And for those that are looking for a simple place to get quick snacks, go to Mirror Lake and farm the final boss. You have to do the entire dungeon. Yes, it's a little tedious, but there are going to be usually high-level players that are always going to be farming this place for those pet snack pixie sticks, which is a guaranteed 30 experience to your pet, or 60 with double pet EXP. So if you're trying to budget out and you're not somebody who has a big garden, you can use this little method on the bottom here. Like I said, we're not going to be covering the gardening pet snacks or the gardening. If you want to see that, I can definitely make one. Just let me know in the comment section below, and while you're at it, down there, check out my Discord if you haven't already. I'm making a coaching thing, and I'm looking forward to, hopefully, if you guys have any clips, go ahead and start. If you have joined the Discord already, be sure to send the clips. I will take a look at them, and I will actually do one-on-one coaching with you guys. I'm still planning on hashing a few things out, and if you are looking to maybe become a Wizard101 coach, please let me know. I would be grateful for that. Anyways, let's move on to gear socketing and pet sockets. Now, jewel socketing is very helpful because you can get extra stats from these jewels as well. It can be damage, pierce, health, resist, power pip, even shadow pip. Pip is also part of it. Health, and even arc mastery if you are somebody who, needs to, especially early game. If you have like a lore spellment because you have the spellments to train it, then you need school pips, and that's where socketing can help you because you can get arc mastery before you actually are able to really actually get arc mastery at level 50. We'll go further into arc mastery and all that in a later chapter. So, as you can see here, I do have all the different jewels categorized. You have the circle, you have the square, triangle, tier, and then you have the ones that are going to be mainly put on your gear. The most common ones that you're going to put on your gear based on what's in that pool. So you're usually going to put damage, pierce in a circle socket. You're usually going to put health or resist in a square socket, usually the health, as you can see on the bottom, the health doesn't really show up until 170 plus. Same thing with percent damage. You'll get flat damage jewels, or pierce, and then pierce jewels. There's also crit jewels, but you're not really going to be utilizing crit that much anyways, so I didn't actually add it. Same thing with like crit block. You're not really going to put crit block in. You know, health and resist are usually the main things for your square sockets. Triangle, power pip, accuracy, just really depends on what you want. Or you can put a spell card on. I know there's the school blades you can put on there. I think there's trap, and then also other spell cards. If you are death, maybe you put on like a skeletal pirate, you know, card on in your triangle socket. Yeah. And then of course your tier socket, usually just put the health in there. If you need the arc mastery, put an arc mastery on. And then of course pet jewels is where you will find your star sockets, where you can put on extra damage, the accuracy jewel, the of course power pip jewel if you need it, resist jewel, yeah, basically whatever you need. So priority should be first on your triangle socket, no matter what. The other one that you should prioritize is tier socket for, of course, arc mastery in the early levels. But of course, the main one is triangle sockets for power pip and accuracy, because with those two different types of jewels, having the power pip will make it so that you get power pips faster, which means you'll be able to get your level 7 spell AoE off Scarecrow faster, and just your spells in general off faster. And accuracy will make sure you do not fizzle those spells when you're attacking. Of course. Okay, so now that we're done through this, let's get into the game stages of gear. So, first off, we'll go over the early game gear. This is probably the most straightforward of it, because there is usually one place that you're going to be going all the time to get the gear that you want. That is the Bazaar. There are 2 dungeons of note, though, that do have best in slot gear at level 30 and 50 respectively, and you will usually trade the level 30 gear out for the level 50 once you reach that point, or you don't have to. And I'll explain in a second. First off, the first dungeon that you'll have is Mount Olympus at level 30. The prerequisite is, of course, you need to finish Marleybone first before you can actually get the quest to go into Mount Olympus. It is world locked. So, you know, it's a very small quest, but it is a good dungeon to do, as you do get a guaranteed wand that has 10% damage, and, you know, you get for free by just doing the dungeon. You all know what it is, the Skyrim Hasta, best weapon in the game for level 30. That extra 10 damage is a lifesaver, especially if you need extra damage. The second dungeon is going to be through your main questing, and that is the final dungeon at the end of Arc 1 to fight Malistaire. And Malistaire will drop your hat, robe, boots, and wand, which will all have damage, a little bit of resist, some accuracy, and then it will have a secondary school on it. I think Death's is Death and Storm. You're never really going to utilize that second school on it. It's niche, but it's there if you really wanted to dual school Storm on a Death. You don't have to, but it's there nonetheless. And the bosses that you're going to be fighting are, of course, Malistaire. And then there's also 2 bosses during your trek to Malistaire that if you fight them, you can get the Athame and the Ring for level 50, which will give you health, mana, power pip, and damage, which is very, very helpful. Having that low extra damage, of course, is one of the guaranteed stats that you really want. Same thing with power pip chance. Now, Mount Olympus's gear is actually, it doesn't have the same amount of damage as the Dragon Spire level 50 gear, but it has power pip and accuracy. So if you really want to, you could run the full Mount Olympus set and then just get the Dragon Spire, Athame, and Ring and Wand for your damage and extra power pip chance. Because you would actually have extra power pip chance with the level 30 gear set mixed with the accessory Athame ring for level 50 rather than just the full 50 set. Now, if you just want to go and just say, hey, I'm not really wanting to just keep grinding out these 2 dungeons, that's perfectly fine. Just go for the Bazaar gear. The Bazaar gear is good enough to carry you through the game, through the early stages of the game, and into the mid-game, where we will find the 2 best sets that will carry you through the entirety of the second arc and the beginning of the third arc, which is going to be your level 60 Waterworks gear, which will be for the entire second arc, because you get it really early in the second arc, aka Zafar. And Celestia beginning of Zafaria, that's when you're usually going to hit level 60, maybe sooner if you do Wintertusk Side World. We won't talk about that whole leveling thing. I may make a leveling guide if you want the most optimized leveling strategy. Yeah, I might do that, but yeah. Either way, Waterworks is definitely the best in slot, but you can also do Celestia bosses to get the Atavistic set, which some of the gear may actually be a little bit better than the Waterworks gear. I'd probably go after the Atavistic boots and the wand if you are trying to mix and match, because once again, wand will give you more damage, and the boots I think actually give power pip and accuracy. I'm not sure. I haven't fully tested that. I will be testing it when I do my full death, I think it was an educational playthrough, but that's besides the point, and we'll talk about that later in an announcement video. Either way, next, after you hit that level 60 spike, then it's all the way up to level 100 when you get the second and the most iconic gear set in probably the entire game, besides some of the early sort of, I call them icon sets, where you get where they come from Arc 1 bosses and they have the designs on them. That's pretty iconic, but this gear is probably, if you were around when this gear set first came out, you remember the hours and hours you spent farming for this gear. The Malistaire gear at level 100 is the best set at your level at level 100, and is the most memorable set because it carries you almost all the way up to level 130, and even sometimes even into level 150 territory. That's how good this gear set is, and was and still is, because it's still the best for level 100. There is a more Gamf set, but it's really not. It falls in that category of like atavistic set, where using the set from Malistaire, the Undying, and Castle Darkmoor is just way better than using the Morganth set, but the Morganth set, Wand, Athame, and Ring can be a good alternative. Or you just get the Alpha Omega Ring from the side boss in Mount Olympus. Now, if you don't have the Alpha Omega Ring, just go for Athames and Rings that are to be switched out at your leisure. Don't worry about them. Just make sure they have damage, power pip chance, and even triangle sockets, mainly, because those are the ones that you want to look for. Now, late game gear, there's no little example things here because it's really simple and straightforward. 130, then you get gear at 140, then you get level at 150, and so forth up to level 180, and they will always have better stats than the previous set. Late game is very simple, but it will require a lot of farming to do. And that's why, I said early game is probably the easiest, because you just need to buy it. You can just buy it. The mid game gear, it takes a little bit of farming. The late game gear takes a lot more farming than the mid game gear. You can also craft the gear, but you need a badge, and then you also need a material to craft the gear, which is very tedious if you don't have a team to do it. Team-ups are usually very slow, sluggish if the people that are with you don't know what they're doing, but I wouldn't worry about that. Crafting does speed up the process, but you don't have to craft it if you don't want to. Anyways, last slide, here we go. So, what are the things we can take away from this entire chapter? 1. keeping on top of your gear and using and making sure you have the best sets is very key and is the big key to making sure you can survive long enough to get your drains off and keep your damage output as optimized as possible so you get the most amount of damage off so you can heal back boogoo oogu loads of damage. That's what you want to do. You want to make sure you can get big heals off to keep yourself in the fight for as long as you need to. Now, one thing that you need to, and this is really mainly through most stages of the game, until maybe late game when you are really needing it, you don't have to have the best in slot gear. You can use what you want, and you should be fine because you can make do with lesser gears if your gameplay is still good. If you're making good decisions while playing, making good card decisions. When to hit, maybe when to buff, maybe when to pull. If you have sideboard that like weaknesses and stuff, when you need to shield. Crafting is an option, and there is an example of this post Waterwork before the Darkmoor set. There are crafted gear pieces that you can craft that have decent stats on them that are a little bit better than the Waterwork set, mainly the robes, but there is one for ice mainly where they can actually get a ton of storm and fire resist, and it just makes them super tanky against the hard-hitting schools, and that really helps them in their mid-game. Death really doesn't have that luxury because the resist that you be getting will be life and myth, but either way, it's still good to know that there are some crafted options that can be supplemented in if you are struggling with, myth boss. Be sure to keep looking at your jewels and your jewel pouch. If you find one that you can use, socket it on. If you have the sockets open. Obviously, if you don't have the sockets open and you can't open them because you don't have crowns, don't worry about it. You don't need to worry about jewels. These are completely optional, but they do give you some extra stats if you need it. And last, and this is probably the big one, what you use for gear is totally up to you. Be creative if you need it. If you want to be the death tank that can just tank a lot of damage but also still do decent hitting, you can do that. Just make a defensive pet and then just run good damage gear. You'll be set. You'll be able to pack a punch but also be able to take a lot of hits. You can really do that. Especially in the, you can really do that. I don't think what stage of the game comes to mind, but there are some ways you can really take the spellproof and spell-defy talents and really bump them up. I think I've seen a pet with like 14 on the spellproof and 7 on the defy. I mean, that's crazy numbers for just what it is. I mean, that's 21% resist right off the back like that. That is crazy work. Because at the end of the day, like it says on the thing here, at the end of the day, you don't really need to worry about the min-max, micro-macro until late game, when the enemies actually have stats like pierce, outgoing damage, crit, block, stun resist, etc., etc. When they have actual stats, that's when you really want to start min-maxing a little bit. Until then, have fun with it. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people need to know. Just have fun with it. You don't have to have the best gear set on the planet. You don't need to be the total min-maxer to have an enjoyable experience in the entire game. Because at the end of the day, it's all about having fun while questing, having fun while, doing team-ups or whatever you find you doing throughout the entire game. So really, the gear set, my guide here is to give you ideas, give you, some helpful knowledge on what you should be doing for your gear, but you don't need to do everything to the letter. If you just do some of it and not do other parts of it, like if you are totally about you don't need to worry about athames and rings that much if you really want to just focus on your main gear set until, if you're in a sort of mindset where, hey, I don't really need a lot of damage from my ring and athame. It's good, but I see myself leaning more towards having more, maybe some survivability, like outgoing healing, incoming healing. That's totally fine. Or other stats that you may want to put on your sockets. That's fine too. Really, as long as you're having fun with it, it really doesn't matter what gear set you're using, as long as you're not totally trolling your team while doing it. Then, if you're trolling your team while doing it, that's not really what you should be doing. But if you really want to take that full defensive set to really have some fun and just show off that you're, that's one thing that, is very fun, is trying to get to damage immunity, right? Taking no damage from a big crit hit that, like that one big storm hit that's coming to hit you. Oh, you just take like 12 damage because you have so much resist on that it really just negates the entire power of storm. That type of stuff, that's very fun. It's fun to mess around with. And that's what I think gear can really do, is it really lets you limit test a lot of what can you get away with in your gear to still also be strong damage-wise. Like I said, you can still do tons of damage while also being fairly tanky at the same time. That's what I think Death has, and I think Myth also shares this sort of category, where they have very good damage hits, but they also have some good resistance in their kit as well, especially late game. So, yeah. I know that this ending slide is probably the longest rant part of the entire video. I do apologize for that, but I just wanted to get off. I'm really wanting you guys to understand that, hey, this is good knowledge to take away and have in your kit, in your back pocket. Because as you continue to progress through the game, you're going to run into stuff that is going to fly over your head sometimes. In some of the later chapters, some of this stuff might go over your head still. I'm just going to try to make sure it's easier to ingest and take and put into your mind, into your playbook. And gear is one step towards that end goal of having all the knowledge you need to properly go through Wizard101 in a way where you're not only progressing fast, but also progressing efficiently while also having fun with it. And I'm going to really, and when we get into the later chapters, I can really show you how to do that. I'm not going to be able to do it with these first two slides because really gear and understanding early, mid, and late game is just the base. It's like the cake, or it's like a meal, right? You have your appetizers. We're getting into the full course meal stuff later down the line. In the next couple slides, that's where we're really going to find a lot more of the meat of the game, right? So, you have your setup, you have your gear. Now it's time to take that and move on to the next few chapters where you're going to learn a lot more about, spell deck, arc mastery, spell weaving, more advanced and more improved advanced tactical stuff that you may want to use. That's where we're going with as we get into the next few chapters. So, this is what we're trying to build you up for in this Death Masterclass. We're going to continue covering other things that are going to continuously, they're going to, a lot of it is going to get a little bit more tricky, like spell deck management, what cards you put in, all that, and like spell weaving, arc mastery, gambits, a lot of more of these advanced strategies are going to be later in the Masterclass, but it's stuff that you should know. Because if you don't know about it, and you go into the later parts of the game, and you see these people trying to, make these strategies with like gambits and stuff, and you end up, you look at that, it's like, what are they doing? This looks weird. Why is this? I don't understand this. Then you end up making little fumbles where you might accidentally mess up a gambit by accidentally, wasting a trap or wasting a weakness or something of the like, right? That's really what this masterclass is. It's building up all the knowledge throughout different parts and stages so that once you're finished with the entire thing, you have a better understanding of not only the game, but the school that you're playing, aka Death, as a whole. Okay, I'm sorry for that. I did not mean to ramble on like that, but that is going to conclude this part of the masterclass. Hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys had some good, knowledge for gear, and you understand gear a lot better. What to do with your gear, how to better, look for gear, get your gear set up, figure out what pet you want to use, get your pets set up, all that. I hope this helped. I hope this gave you a little idea of what you are looking for and what you may want to look for in your gear, your jewels, your pets, and stuff as a whole, so that you can continue progressing through your Wizard101 journey. Once again, if you're looking for coaching, be sure to check the Discord. It's on the channel. You can easily find it off the channel. Be sure, if you are looking to have coaching by me, be sure to submit your clips, or if you want to set up a one-on-one, be sure to DM me or ping me in the Discord server. I will happily help you out, because that is what my job is, or what I'm planning to make my job as a Wizard101 coach. A game coach. Hopefully you will utilize the services. And if you are somebody who is very knowledgeable of the game and wants to be a coach, be sure to let me know. I would love to have you as part of the coaching team, and so we can maybe in the later stages of these guides make like a super actual site where you can have all these guides in one giant place to peruse at your leisure. Anyways, be sure to like and subscribe. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a comment below and let me know, if you have any questions about this chapter or even the previous chapter. I will try to answer as many of them as possible. And yeah, be sure to check out my streams live at twitch.tv/SilentTheHusky, because I will be starting the full educational Death playthrough on stream. It's going to be a no BS guide, and just overall, 3 to 4 hours of just educational play-by-play game content as I take a Death Wizard from level 1 and progress that character all the way up to maybe the mid-game, maybe the late game. I don't know. We'll see how far it goes and how far we want to take that wizard, and then there will also be a video discussing about that journey at a later time. Either way, hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday. I'm recording this Thursday night, but it will be Friday when this video comes up. Hope you guys have a nice Friday, and I will see you guys in the next chapter of the Death Masterclass for Wizard101. See you guys next time, and have a good one.